Hi, my name is Vivek Aggarwal. I've been a software developer with the Messenger team at Yahoo for the last 5 years. But for the last year and a half, I've been responsible for the design and development of a comprehensive set of web service APIs that you can use via web service calls. For the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to give you a brief introduction on our APIs and hopefully getting you to incorporate them into some really awesome hacks. There's not a whole lot you need to know in order to use our APIs. You need to be familiar with HTTP, the concept of URIs, URI parameters, URL encoding, request response, headers, HTTP content. As you go through our API guide online, you're going to find various aspects of the RESTful design that we have incorporated. As one of the fundamentals being, we try to do a sync between the messenger operation that you're trying to perform and the HTTP request. So for instance, if you're trying to delete somebody from your messenger buddy list, that translates into an HTTP delete request. So as you go through the guide, actually, you're going to see a bunch of APIs using get, post, also the less commonly occurring put and delete. So we launched with that, and it was all well and good, but as we started working with our mobile partners, we found a little issue. We found the HTTP stack of a lot of mobile devices were not very friendly towards put and delete, and so we had to provide a very simple override to work around that. So now, as a blanket rule, if you need, you can just use HTTP post and provide an added URI parameter _, method with the original API method that you plan to use. So if any of you find yourself building mobile hacks or building hacks on platforms that don't support the full stack of HTTP methods, you can definitely use this override. You have to be familiar with JSON, JavaScript object notation. Currently, our APIs have absolutely no XML support. Everything sent to and from our APIs has to be JSON encoded. In fact, it also has to be UTF-8 encoded. All Messenger APIs require valid user credentials. You can obtain valid user credentials using just standard OAuth. We also actually wanted to make our APIs a little bit more mobile-friendly, so in addition to standard OAuth, we implement something called direct OAuth. I'm going to not spend too much time talking about direct OAuth, but to give you the key takeaway about it, it provides you a programmatic solution to get user credentials without having to implement any kind of browser support for the authorization flow. If you're going to use direct OAuth, one thing to keep in mind is your consumer key must have read-write access to the messenger scope. A couple of other mobile integration-friendly optimizations that we did. Again, working with our mobile partners, what we found is that the date time on the messenger on mobile devices was not reliable, and that caused issues with the OAuth timestamp parameter that you had to submit to our APIs. So we provided another workaround to that. We said, OK, you can use the plain text OAuth signature method with our APIs if you need. In that case, we'll basically relax the restriction required by the timestamp. A little pitfall here, however, if you're going to use plain text or HTTP, your consumer key and your consumer secret is pretty much going to be sent in the clear. May not be that big a deal, though. As I sat thinking about how to write this presentation, I wanted to introduce you to the core APIs. And the way I wanted to bucket those APIs was really into two clusters. Those that enable client-to-server communication, these are typically the result of some kind of user action. Like the user says he wants to now log into Messenger. He wants to send an instant message. We've also got the second bucket of APIs that enable server-to-client communication. I mean, after all, Messenger is a communications product. But our web server does not support any callbacks, so the way to enable server-to-client communication is really for the client to say, OK, server, give me all the information you have for me that's sitting on the server right now. Some of these events include things like instant message, somebody sent you an IM, somebody tried to add you to your buddy list. Walking through some of the more critical client-to-server APIs, the biggest and the heaviest, I think the most fascinating, frankly, is login. I'm pretty sure anybody building a hack is going to have to start here. Login does a lot. I mean, you can start by dynamically controlling and broadcasting the kind of capabilities that you want to support as part of this login session. I'm actually going to talk about a few of these because I think they're really cool. Mail alerts. So Mail alerts is a really simple kind of like login capability or a feature, as you could think of it, but it provides a tremendous integration between mail and messenger. So here's how it works, right? I mean, you log into our APIs and you say, okay, I want to log this user in and I want to say he is capable of mail alerts. So our server says, okay, you logged in now. When is the last time this user actually accessed Yahoo Mail? And so between that time and now, if any new emails arrive for the user and they've not been read, you'll actually get a mail alert notification saying you have 3 new emails in your Yahoo mailbox. Not just that, even within a session, if you're kind of browsing along Messenger, you've got a client open on a phone or an application, and a new email arrives for you, you're going to get an alert from us. Another mail alert notification is going to say you have 1 new email, and here's the subject of that email. In fact, sometimes you might even see who the sender of that email is in terms of a pretty name and not just their email address. Login, other capabilities are things like file transfer, buzz, smiley. Those are more just client-to-client capability sharing. You're telling other clients out there, hey, I can receive a file, I can send a file, I can interpret smileys, I can interpret buzz events. If you don't set these, good behaving clients out there on the field are essentially going to gray out those capabilities. So somebody can't send you a buzz event, for instance. Login also lets you provide the presence attributes for the user logging in. So this is really important if you want to do something even as simple as, say, login invisible, like most Messenger clients let you do that. Or if you want to send something more, comprehensive, like saying, I'm busy, but I've got this custom message as well. Login's also the point where we recommend you get back the buddy list for the user. And there's really 2 formats in which you can get this. You can get this as a list of contacts or a list of groups. Look for the URI parameter, the fields buddy list, or the fields group list to control that behavior. Not much to talk about logout, frankly. Logout's just, log me out of Messenger. Keep alive, on the other hand. You should know the Messenger servers will periodically wake up and run an inventory of all the active sessions that it's got right now in its cloud. And it's going to say, okay, of these sessions, I'm going to force log off everybody that's idle right now. Now, I know that sounds scary, but it's really not. The only way, all you have to do to prevent that from happening is to send us a session keep alive event, kind of like a client heartbeat, if you think about it. And our API documents saying, okay, send this event to the server, at most or no more than once an hour, so it's not that much. You want to be able to support changing the user's presence attributes during their login session. The user wants to go from available to idle, or you want to set a custom message and say, hey, this is what I'm doing right now. You want to be looking at the presence management APIs under /presence. Messenger is a communication product after all. So you definitely want to be looking at the message management APIs. This is where you send an instant message to somebody on your list, or not on your list. I know the API design says network out there, but if you're using these APIs, you're not going to be able to talk to people outside the Yahoo network. So unlike a lot of our desktop clients where you can add people in MSN, Hotmail, and talk, communicate via IM back and forth, you can't do that with our APIs that are publicly available. In fact, other operations that let you fetch, like your ignore list, your buddy list, the server's going to strip out any non-Yahoo network contacts that you might have before returning the data back to you. We also have the contact and group list management APIs. If you weren't able to fetch your contact list as part of the login response, which is recommended, alternatively, you can fetch it from right here. Something I actually added Tuesday in preparation of this Hack Day event is another integration, this time between Messenger and Address Book. I just want to point out, though, Yahoo has a comprehensive set of APIs called the Contacts API. And that's what you want to be using if you want to manipulate a user's address book, right? You want to say, I want to edit the contact card from my Messenger buddy, put in an email address, put in a phone number. But in order to make it a single point for you to implement a Messenger API or Messenger client, we decided to do some minimal subset integration. So you can now use the Messenger APIs to say, okay, for my Messenger buddies, I want to fetch some basic contact card information. So you can get things like your first name, last name, email address, your buddy's nickname, email, home phone, work phone, mobile phone number. So it's kind of pretty that way because if you're making a buddy, you're rendering a buddy list, you don't want to just show Yahoo ID. You want to say, Vivek Aggarwal. Just so you know, it's a subset integration. So if you've got more than one mobile number, we don't know how to handle that, and you'll only get one of them in the response contact card. And there's no defined behavior to say which one of those it's going to be. Also, the address book integration is a read-only integration. You can't actually edit any of those details through the APIs that are publicly available. Again, I'll point you to the Contacts API for direct integration with the address book for that. Contact list and group list management APIs. This is where you're going to add a contact to a group or delete a contact to a group. Bear in mind, contacts are always associated with groups. You can't just have contacts lingering without a group association. Okay, server to client APIs. In our API guide, we talk a lot about the word notification. We say notification server, notification definition, notification types. We say notification. What is a notification? So let's clear out some technical jargon here. An event targeted to somebody logged into these APIs, that's what we call a notification. I think that's best explained through just walking through some of the more common notification types you're going to see as you integrate Messenger APIs. You're going to get something called a message notification if somebody sends you an instant message. Buddy info. So this is the one I really want you to take a look at on the APIs online. Buddy info notifications have a wealth of data about your contacts. It tells you things like your contact has file transfer, buzz, smiley capabilities. It tells you things like your contact is currently idle or busy or has a custom status message. It tells you the display image preferences of your contact. Does your contact have an avatar image or a custom image, and how do you get it? Because it's got the checksum associated with it. So buddy info notifications really arrive under two conditions. One is you've just logged into Messenger. That automatically triggers a flood of buddy info notifications to you and tells you all of this data about every contact that you currently have online on your buddy list. Also, say you're logged into the session at this point and somebody comes online, again, the server's going to send you a buddy info notification. Buddy status and log off, those are really just delta notifications. Log off you're going to get when a buddy of yours goes offline. Buddy status is when somebody changes their present attributes, say they go from online to idle to busy, set a new message. And then buddy authorize, essentially someone's trying to add you to their buddy list, or you try to add somebody to your list and then they decide to send you an accept or denial response. Something more about notifications, they are sequence numbered. These sequence numbers are integers, they are incremental, they're unique to a particular session, login session only. As you design to handle notifications, so by the way, notifications sequence numbers are generated automatically by the server based on the order in which those notifications arrive for the session. A couple of things you need to design for. Very, very unlikely, but sometimes notification sequences can skip a number or two. For instance, you tell the server, I want my notifications and I want 5 of them. And the server says, okay, here's 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. And you're like, okay, where did 3 go? So 3 is missing, and you should be able to handle that, although very unlikely. But to know here, it's not like 3 will show up later as kind of like an out-of-order notification. It just means it was lost. You should be able to design to skip unknown notifications. So as we keep adding more and more features to this API set, you might start seeing notifications for things you just never handled in the past. So you should be able to skip those. So we talked about the crux of server-to-client communication, what is a notification, but we haven't really talked about retrieving notification, real-time communication. I mean, you can send an event, but how do you get it back, and how do you get it back quickly? There's 2 mechanisms we support. One is called periodic polling. It's pretty much exactly as the name suggests. You just poll the server and you say, okay, I want notifications starting from sequence number 5 because I've already handled 1 to 5, and now I want starting at 5. You can optionally specify a count and say, well, I want from 5, but I want a maximum of 5 in the response. What's going to happen is the server is going to get the request. It's going to look at the cloud and say, is there anything in the cloud right now that matches your criteria of what you're looking for? If there is, it's going to return it back to you in the HTTP response. If there isn't, it's still going to return nothing to you as an HTTP response, just a 200 OK. Key takeaway here, periodic polling. You submit the request to the server handles it, and responds to it immediately. So essentially, the real-timeness of your application is limited to how often you can poll for notifications, and that currently is suggested to be once every 5-10 seconds. Another thing is the notification using periodic polling does not support persistent connections, even if you use HTTP 1.1. The alternative is to use something called the comet-style push. It's what we internally refer to as just a long poll. It's pretty much similar in semantics. You make an HTTP request. You say, I'm interested in notifications starting from sequence number 5. And server gets your request and says, OK, cloud, is there anything that matches the criteria what you're asking for? If there is, the server responds. If there isn't, your request essentially just hangs there. And then one of 3 things can typically happen. 1, your client times out. Your HTTP request to the server, it just times out on the client side. 2, the server decides, OK, that's been long enough. I'm going to close this HTTP transaction. Typically, that timeline is correlated to the idle timeout that you might provide in the request. And the server says, OK, we're done with this request. I'm responding to you in a clean 200 OK without any data, because nothing came in during that time. Or 3, between the time that you started hanging and sometime after, before the idle timeout, something came in for you. Somebody sent you an IM or somebody logged off. So you received a notification, and what the server says, OK, let me send that back as a response to this pending HTTP request. Key takeaway, and that's how long poll and comet works. If you're using HTTP 1.1, the connection isn't closed. So the TCP connection persists. Also, it is expected that the clients are going to turn around and once again submit another long poll. So you can kind of see what we're going with here. By maintaining constant long polls with the server and persistent connection, you've essentially got a low overhead illusion of a constant communication pipe between server and client that the server can use to send you events real time as they become available. The Messenger APIs online, we've been spending a good amount of time for the last year and a half, and we didn't want to make it just about basic IM features. We wanted to say, well, do something more along premium IM features. We've got file transfer. You can use our APIs to broker file transfer handshakes between 2 individuals. You can also use the infrastructure we have in place to actually relay the transmission of the datagram, the binary blob between the 2 endpoints. So you don't even have to do peer-to-peer transfers. Just remember one thing we commonly seen with developers, if you're going to build a file transfer integration into your hack, do send the file transfer capability in the login request. We also integrate display images, which are those nice little small icons you see next to your buddy's name on your buddy list, or the really big one you see in the IM window. You can get that through the display image APIs that we have, or you took a picture here at Hack Day and you want to upload it as your new Messenger image, so you can upload it through these APIs as well. So as you go through the online API guide, there's a wealth of information. And to get you started on building really fun and quick hacks, I wanted to put together a couple of guidelines that I think you should follow, but it's completely up to you, however, whatever works best. Starting a sample session, of course, Messenger APIs are credential-based. Go ahead, get your users' credentials. You choose standard OAuth or direct OAuth. Depends what works for you. Log in. Request for the buddy list as part of the login response. That saves an extra API call to retrieve it. In fact, I'll go even a step further and say try to get it back as a list of groups because that's a more comprehensive data set. Information about your buddies. It's tempting to use our contact and group list management APIs to get all the attributes about your buddies, their presence attributes, their capabilities. But you don't really need to, because as soon as you log in, the server's going to send you a bunch of buddy info notifications, which you talked about before. Login also automatically subscribes you to Delta notifications in the form of buddy status, log off, and many other notification types that are documented. Something we haven't talked about before, but we'll talk about now, login also triggers any offline messages you may have received. So between now and when you last logged into Messenger, if somebody sent you an IM, you're going to receive that as part of this login in the form of an offline message notification. And that's pretty much it in terms of guidelines I wanted to recommend. Go ahead, use the other API calls. Don't forget to call the Keep Alive API. Pick the notification mechanism that best suits your need. You might find the periodic polling one to be just easier to start hacking with, to start with. Just make sure you keep a good 5-second delay between each request. And then when you're done, just log out of Messenger with a simple call with an HTTP delete request. I'm not going to talk about direct OAuth too much. General flow, your consumer key must have read-write access to Yahoo Messenger. As I said, this is a easy and simple programmatic solution to get the user's credentials and start using it against Messenger. First step, everything is HTTPS. Exchange your user's ID and password for what is called a part. It's a pre-approved request token. Exchange the part for an access token or an access handle. Again, that's a kind of standard OAuth flow. But in case you are using a mobile integration or building a mobile hack and you have issues with the timestamp on your phone, you can use the plain text OAuth signature method again and work around that timestamp requirement. When you're done, refresh the access token as needed, depending on the expiration time that's broadcasted in the response. And that's about it. As I said, I've been building these APIs for about a year and a half. I know pretty much everything there is to it, from everything we talked about here to everything that's documented online. We're not going to do Q&A right now. That's going to be more of an offline process. But I'm going to be here all of today and tomorrow as much as I can. Feel free to come by and ask me as many questions as you want. Good luck, and thanks for your time.